This is the Puck Junk Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Puck Junk Hockey Podcast. I'm Sal Berry and with me is Tim Parrish. And today we're going to talk about the 2025 NHL Entry Draft. We are also going to talk about the 2025 Hockey Hall of Fame inductees, aka the class of 2025 for the Hockey Hall of Fame. Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, unless, of course, you have an airborne illness and I'm now infected through the interwebs.
That'd be a computer virus.
It might be a computer virus.
Yeah.
But it would be way more advanced technology than we're going to talk about here in a minute with the NHL Draft.
Oh my God. You know that joke about this meeting could have been an email? This draft could have been a Zoom meeting and or a cameo, considering all the celebrity appearances that they had in the first round. Now, you said you did not watch the draft because you were busy doing parental stuff.
Well, I mean, we were kind of getting ready for a graduation party, but I watched most of the first round that I actually could pay attention to, but you know, I don't have 37 hours to sit and stare at the TV to watch 20 people get drafted because that was horrible.
Okay, so for those of you who have too much self-respect and or self-esteem to not watch
exactly
not watch the NHL draft. And like I say, it's like sucking the crumbs out of the bag of potato chips, right? Like you're so desperate for just a little bit more of the potato chips, but you've eaten the whole bag. So you take the bag and you just kind of shake it and then you like dump those crumbs into your mouth. That's what watching the draft is, right? Because it's hockey, but not really. It's like hockey, but it's boring at the same time. And I made myself watch the entire first round. And I wanted to watch other stuff. It was like, that first round was 3.5 hours. And I was actually like waiting for the draft to end because I wanted to watch something else. And it just wouldn't freaking end. And yeah, but I got through it. I'm like, no, you're a hockey fan and you wanted to watch this. You're going to watch this and you're going to see it through the end, at least to the first round. But yeah,
you sure it wasn't 4.5 hours? Because I feel like it was longer than that.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, let me think. It started at 6 and it ended at 10:30. Oh my God, I can't count. Yeah, 6 o'clock Chicago time, and then it went till 10:30 Chicago time. So yeah,
that's what I thought it was, like 4.5 hours. Because
it was 4.5 hours.
It was so ridiculous.
Yeah, I want to say it was slotted from 6 to 10. But it just went to 6 to 10:30. But yeah, it was pretty freaking long. And so anyways, as I was saying earlier, before I got sidetracked a few times in my own stories, but they called this a decentralized draft. So instead of having everybody fly into one city and have them all show up to a stadium, like when I went to the NHL draft, when they had it in Chicago and they were all at the United Center and all the scouts were there, all the GMs were there, all the team presidents and vice presidents were there. And it's kind of a big hody-do, right? This time they just had all the prospects come to Los Angeles, and then everybody else stayed in their home cities, and they would make an announcement. Sometimes they'd have somebody who was actually in Los Angeles to make the announcement on their behalf. Sometimes they would have a video of somebody making the announcement. I don't know. Some of them might have been pre-recorded. Some of them were live. That's just how they did it. So the player would get drafted. They would come up. They'd be handed an NHL jersey. And then they would walk into this, I forget what they call it. They had a cute name for it. But it was like basically they'd walk into like, was it called the draft room or something? It was like they'd walk into a room with like a big screen and there'd be like the general manager and like a couple other team personnel, and they would greet the player virtually on like this giant Big Brother is watching kind of screen. Did you catch any of that?
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the central points of my disdain for the entire thing. So the best part of the draft was always having the guys walk up to the stage and shake hands with all the executives Then they get to put on the jerseys. They do the photo op, which sometimes Upper Deck would make cards out of. And, this is like the pinnacle of the player's career up to that point. And it's the culmination of all the hard work that they've gone through for their entire lives just to get to that point, not to mention their parents. I mean, how much money and time and driving your kid to 4 a.m. to practices and everything else in their rinks and all of that. And, the billet families and everything else that are involved in getting a player to that point. But no, instead, we have them put on a jersey and then go walk into this secret room in front of a giant movie theater screen so they could go on a Zoom call. Dumb. Absolutely dumb. If this was COVID, I understand. But good Lord.
Yeah, I agree. Like during COVID, the NHL had to do what they had to do a draft and, try to make it interesting and still fun despite, the circumstances. I think here, though, there were a lot of technical problems, and that's what kind of made it a little laughable was like you'd have like a player talk and like the GM couldn't hear them, so they'd just be silent. So the player would be like, "Oh, it's such an honor to be drafted by your team," and then like the GM and the assistant GM and the team president would just be staring back at them blankly, and you felt bad.
The worst was the Bruins when Higgins got drafted, because he's standing there and he says all this stuff like, "I'm so honored, to be able to come back to Boston and play for the city again," and blah blah blah, and you have like. All the guys are just sitting there, just like they were saying nothing. Like it was just silence, and they had these blank looks on their faces. It gave off like reality show vibes, like where somebody was picked to be voted off the island, and they're making their last plea for people to reconsider and not vote them off the island.
Right, yeah.
It was horrible, like some kind of weird Hunger Games. Squid Game kind of hybrid thing, only they didn't kill anybody.
I did enjoy the fact that they had a lot of celebrities or former players or sometimes even current players do the draft pick. And actually just growing off that thought for a minute, I think sometimes when you have these in-person drafts, they get a little ridiculous with how many people they have on stage. I mean, I get it. Okay, you have a little kid in a Calgary Flames jersey, and he's going to hand the draft pick the Calgary Flames hat to put on. You know what I mean? And then you have like the GM, the assistant GM, the head of scouting. Like everybody shakes their hands. Like I think when the Hawks had the draft, they set some sort of record for like the most people up on stage at one time during a draft, because it's like they just had this kid shake everybody's hand, and it just I think that's when the NHL was like, okay, this is getting a little tedious. We're like we get it, you're excited, you drafted this player in the first round, but do they really need to shake the assistant to the general manager, not the assistant general manager, but the assistant to the general manager's hand, right? And I think the answer is no. So at least that cut this out. They shook Gary Bettman's hand, which makes a lot of sense because he's the freaking commissioner. So yeah, I get it.
Notice it wasn't like the NFL draft though. None of the players got up there and hugged Gary and like lifted him up off the ground and spun him around.
I don't think any of them praised Jesus either, like the NFL draft.
Maybe. I didn't see enough because it was so disjointed from that point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here's the thing. I have a million different things that I didn't like about this whole thing. It took soul-suckingly long to get through this entire thing. We've already said it was over 4 hours. They were doing like 5 picks an hour, and the timers weren't even starting when they should have. Like there's a 3-minute timer on the screen, and then there's 15 minutes between the time the timer ends and they make the announcement. It's like, if you were trying to speed this up, it's not working. Mm-hmm. If you were trying to save money by not sending all these people and trainers and scouts and everything else to some centralized location, well, now you're losing people watching because they don't want to see this, and it's boring and it's horrible and it's just dumb. So I know there were 26 teams that voted to hold this thing decentralized. And I think once we know who those 26 teams were, or we find out, then I want draft picks taken from all those 26 teams and have them awarded to the 6 teams that voted not to do this because they were only the smart ones.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be punishment for those 26 teams, and we'll award the other 6 teams who voted wisely to not do that.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe the teams had 3 minutes to make a pick, but then once the pick was made, it was like 10 minutes to like give the kid his jersey and have him go into the Zoom room and talk with the team personnel. And that was tedious. I liked it though. I mean, you know what? They tried to keep things moving. It was boring though. I was bored. I was a little interested and I was bored. I was interested by when they brought in the celebrities. So I say celebrities, I say that loosely. It could have been a PGA golfer. It could have been an NFL player. It could have been a former NBA player in the case of Charles Barkley, who is a celebrity and a former NBA player. And he's a huge hockey fan. So it was cool when he made the announcement for one of the Flyers' first round picks. And I thought that was fun. You know, not every single quote unquote celebrity appearance was awesome, but at least the teams tried, and I think that's okay. They tried to make it interesting, and I thought that was one way they tried to make it interesting.
Well, my counterpoint to that is no.
Wow.
Just no. The celebrity thing, no. I mean, I get it. If you're there and in person and doing stuff and having them give out things, even have a celebrity host if you want to do that. You know, why not? But I'm at the point now where if I'm watching sports, if you're trying to get sports fans to change the channel, put something on ESPN because I'm kind of at that point now. So this is what they did. They put it on ESPN. So everything seemed forced and contrived and badly scripted and horribly delivered and dry as the Sahara Desert when every single one of these celebrities would come out and try to be like all shucky and jivey with everything that they were doing. It's like, here, let's introduce team fan bases to potentially the future of their franchise in the most lackadaisical, unthought-provoking way possible. Yeah, sure, that'll get people excited. So no. As much as I think I understand what they were trying to do, I don't think it added any redeeming qualities whatsoever. It wasn't funny. They weren't entertaining to me. It was mostly just awkward and weird.
Okay, wait, hold on. I thought Adam Sandler as Happy Gilmore announcing the Bruins pick was awesome.
I mean, that was fine, but that was also a movie plug because part 2 is coming out soon. So
that's okay, though. It's Happy Gilmore, and it was Bruins related, and it made sense. It fit.
I'll give you that one, I guess.
Okay. Hold on. Joshua Jackson and Margaret Moreau from the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, and most people that are well past that point in time are probably sitting there going, who are these people? What movie? Do I get to Google that? I shouldn't have to do that.
Anybody who knows hockey knows the Mighty Ducks. Even if you never watched it, you know it.
But that's the thing. If you're trying to broaden your fan base and bring people in, because everyone watches the NFL draft. Heck, more people were watching the NBA draft, and all I hear about the last 2 years is how much the NBA sucks and nobody watches it anymore.
Right, but who's watching the NHL draft? It's hockey fans. So I think for hockey fans, it was cool to see Jeremy Roenick come out and make the Chicago Blackhawks pick. Adam Sandler come out and make the Bruins pick. Well, not come out. Roenick was in person. Sandler was via a video feed. Charles Barkley video feed. Jerry Bruckheimer made the announcement for the Kraken, which I thought was awesome. Again, the two former child actors, Joshua Jackson, who was, I guess he ended up in Dawson's Creek after Mighty Ducks. So he did okay for himself. And
I got to ask a question about Bruckheimer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did he do something to his face?
Looks like it. Yeah, he looks like he tried to get a facelift and it didn't work. He looked
like he was wearing those fake glasses with the fake nose.
Yeah,
disguise.
Yeah.
He looked like somebody disguised as Jerry Bruckheimer.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
It was weird.
And I always thought Dave Coulier was funny. When I watched Full House as a kid, he was my favorite character on that show, Uncle Joey. And he's a Red Wings fan, and he beat cancer. Yeah. So, hey, win, right? He made the pick. I was happy about that. Of course, Meredith Goudreau, Johnny Goudreau's widow, making the announcement for the Blue Jackets. That was a very nice thing for the Blue Jackets to do. I think you can't disagree with that, obviously.
Like I said, I get what they were trying to do, and I understand it. And if the formatting was different and I wasn't already jaded on the whole thing, I probably would have been fine with it. Because it's like, it was one thing after another, it seemed like. Because, yeah, we've already voted to have this as a decentralized draft. How much worse could it be? Well, I don't know. Let's have people on video feeds that don't work. Let's have people stand awkwardly in front of a giant screen. And here's the worst part, right? I think this is probably the worst part. You just did this thing outstandingly. And I know that's not a word, but I'm making it a word. You just did this outstanding thing last year at the Sphere in Las Vegas. It was insanely awesome with the draft. Then you have a really exciting season. Great playoffs. You cap it off with a back-to-back Stanley Cup champion. You got this newish-ish CBA that's getting ready to be finalized. Pretty big trade kicks off the draft day with that Noah Dobson trade for 2 first-round picks and a prospect. And then you cap the whole thing off with whatever this was. And it's like, wow, this is so anticlimactic. And now we have, we're going into the trade or the signing deadline, free agent frenzy, the whole thing. And, a couple of days before, all this crap's going down. So it's like you had this big tidal wave of stuff happening, and then you just let it crash out and nothing else happens. Look, there were no trades involving NHL players during the draft. The only excitement came in the first round, I think, when the Penguins and the Flyers made a trade for the 12th pick. And that was boring. I mean, it wasn't even like some impactful, giant, crazy thing that was going to happen. Where were all the GMs, sauntering over to the other team's tables, and then the panel of people talking like, oh, something must be going on. I think a trade's going down because they're over there talking. There was none of that. It was boring. It was just boring. The interactions with the team executives are generally what make the draft coverage good, and this was far from it. Because you're looking in these war rooms and stuff. There's no audio. You can't hear anything. And the only time anybody was on audio is when they'd have the 3 or 4 or sometimes 5 guys that were the main guys standing there to greet whoever was walking in and be judged before they're terminated. Like, that was the whole vibe I was given. And I know I'm sounding like I'm so angry about this, but
wait. So the Dobson trade happened before the draft?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, what about the Gibson for Mrazek trade between Anaheim and Detroit? Was that during round 1, or was that during the next day?
I think it was the day after. It wasn't during the first day.
Because I did watch the second day, and it's kind of all blended together. Although the second day went a lot faster because there wasn't all the hoopla and stuff.
Right. Yeah, the first day there were no trades involving actual NHL players at the time. Mm-hmm. Like, none that I saw. I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, somebody can fact check me on that, but I don't think there were. And that broadcast panel, I mean, they tried, but it was terrible.
Well, sometimes they just don't have anything to talk about. I mean, you can only say so much about a player who got picked, and you just say, I mean, it's like, okay, they're 18 years old.
Well, that's the point. It's 4 hours. It's super long. You could only
reiterate their stats. You could say what players they're comparable to, which I thought was cool, to say he's like this type of player. Like, if you say he's a Chris Pronger type of player, you immediately know what kind of player he is. You know what I mean? That's just, I think that's fine, even though that's kind of giving them some expectations to maybe live up to. But
I felt like 2 hours in, they were already disinterested, and it only just progressively got worse. The whole story with Matthew Schaefer, the whole emotional factor that went around that was great theater.
Why don't you talk about that?
Well, I think they really should have expanded on it. I mean, his mom passed away, and there's a lot of background information in that made for at least somewhat entertaining TV, because it pulled at the emotional heartstrings of the people watching. I wasn't a big fan of some of the questions when he got to the panel.
Yeah,
and he had to sit there, and they're like, so, you worked hard and got to this point. Tell me about your dead mother.
Yeah, what would your mother say to you right now if she was still alive? Oh, she would just say how proud she is of me. I mean, what kind of question is that? Now, just want to explain really quick because you didn't. I asked you to. You did not, so I will. I'll step in now. Tapping in. What are they? It's like tag team wrestling. I'm tagging in. So
you're the fat guy. I'm just the guy that makes speculations and conjecture.
So the New York Islanders drafted defenseman Matthew Schaefer first overall. His mother passed away from cancer some time ago. I forget how long ago, even though I'm the fat guy. They handed him the jersey. He puts it on, and then he noticed that there was a breast cancer awareness patch on the jersey. And I guess he kissed the patch or something, and then he started crying. And I missed that part. But, yeah, I mean, that was nice. They were honoring his mother, and I thought that was a very nice touch. But then asking questions like, what would your deceased relative say? And then they're like, well, she's watching you right now. And I'm just like, don't say that. That's something you say maybe one-on-one to somebody. But when you're saying it in front of like a televised audience, it just seems like maybe she didn't want to ask the question, but she had to. So,
and that's the thing. That was early on.
Yeah, that was the first pick. That was as early as it gets.
Like they were probably on the third or fourth pick when they got him over to the table to talk.
Yes.
So at that point, if those are your questions that you're throwing out there at that point, it was downhill from there. I mean, to me. But that's the thing. You want to put these in. I mean, the James Hagan story too had some emotional attachment, mixed in with it. And here's the thing. These are prospects that are being picked, that are being drafted. How many in the first, second, third round, how many prospects get drafted and are NHL ready and we see them the first day of training camp and the first day of the season? It's not many because these guys aren't necessarily NHL ready at the time. Some of them are, and those are generally the guys that get drafted really high. But you have this whole entire first round of draft picks, and if your name's not Schaefer or Higgins or Misa or one of the guys that goes in the top 5 or 6, and you're on the back end of that, I mean, your fan base most likely isn't going to see you for 2-3 seasons. You're going to disappear. You're playing juniors. You're going to college. You're going to get shoved in the AHL until you're ready because generally you're undersized. You're underweight. You got to bulk up. You got to learn the game. You got to get up to speed. All of those crazy cliches that are used all the time, they're true. They're true. And it's hard to create a storyline for your fans and make them care about a guy as a player, but also as a human that they want to cheer for. So creating those background stories and laying the groundwork for that, hey, I like this guy. I like what he's about. I like what he's had to go through. I like his storyline. I can be a fan of that. I can get behind that. Again, like I said earlier, these are potentially future franchise players, especially first rounders. And you have this opportunity. You want to tell that story. I don't think they did enough of it. They picked and chose what they did, harped on it, basically drove them into the ground, and didn't really spend a whole lot of time on the rest. I would have liked to see more of that. Again, I would have liked it to be more entertaining, way less time consuming. And this decentralized thing, honestly, it's got to go. And even Bettman said, like, all those interviews he did during Stanley Cup Finals, I mean, how many times did he make it clear that the teams voted for this? The teams wanted this format. I'd be happy to go back the way it was, but the teams voted for this. Like, he kept emphasizing that. Clearly, he didn't want it to be like this, but he does what they tell him. And
maybe he's just tired of getting blamed for everything. So he's just like, hey, the teams voted. Don't blame me. The teams wanted this.
I mean, nobody's going to stop hating on Bettman because that's just what we do as hockey fans.
No, I'm probably the only hockey fan who doesn't hate Gary Bettman.
I don't hate him, but I jump on the bandwagon just because that's what we do.
No, I don't do that. Screw that. Mob mentality is stupid sometimes, many times, most of the time. Bettman did more for the NHL than anybody.
I agree.
He did more as a non-player. I mean, you could say Gretzky did a lot for the NHL for all the records he created and all the records he broke and and all of that stuff, and even as an ambassador of the game today. But like, I feel like Bettman did more than anything for the NHL. So like, I don't boo him. I don't hate on him. I think he did a lot of things right. I know a lot of people hate on him because of the lockouts and yeah, okay, well,
yeah, but you always blame the boss.
Yeah, got to break some eggs though sometimes, right?
I mean, it's true, and we wouldn't be where we were in the game today if it wasn't for all of the growing pains that they had to go through and various things. People don't like him because he doesn't stick to the hardcore traditional rules. I think that's part of the problem. But
rules or roles?
Both rules and roles. The unwritten rules of hockey that have always existed for the old school fans, that he's kind of progressed the game into a different direction.
Yeah, that's okay. We don't need to bludgeon each other over the heads with sticks until we were concussed like the 70s.
All I know is if they do another decentralized draft, I might bludgeon someone.
Well, I do want to say this really quick. Well, it's still on my mind. The one other celebrity guest that I thought was great was stand-up comedian Nikki Glaser, who was made the announcement for the Blues. Did you see her when she came out? That was the 19th pick, so maybe by then you were tuned out.
I did not see that because I was trying to hang on because the Penguins made some trades and moved down to like 22, I think. And then I think that's what they got in the Philly trade for the 12th pick. But they moved down to like 22 or something like that. And I had too many things going on. So
okay, so Nikki Glaser comes out and she's talking about how she's from St. Louis, how she likes the Blues, how she's excited to be here, and then she says, "I'm happier than Brett Hull at an open bar." And I'm cracking up, right? And I'm like, "Oh God, please do like 5 minutes of this, right?" And then there's just like a few chuckles, and I thought it was a good joke. And then you could tell that she thought, okay, that didn't land, but it wasn't because it wasn't a funny joke. It was just because the audience, I think, well, because they're all kids that are getting drafted. So they're probably like looking at each other like, who's Brett Hull? I don't know. Is he a hockey player? Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
I could see that. I mean, she's one of those ones that's always on the roast and the insult type comic.
But then the other joke she said, fun fact about me in high school, I was actually my prom's 19th pick. And I was traded after the first dance.
That's a good timely one.
Yeah, that was a good one. I was actually my prom date's 19th pick. Yeah. So I thought she was good. And then like when the Penguins trotted out Chris Letang and his son like 3 times, I was just like, oh my God. Bettman is like doing all this buildup. He's like, this next person who's going to announce the Penguins draft pick has been a member of the Penguins for his entire career. So I'm like, it's Sidney Crosby. And then he's like, and he was a member of all 3 Stanley Cup championship teams. I'm like, it's got to be Sidney Crosby or maybe Evgeny Malkin. No, Malkin doesn't like to speak English. Okay, it's Sidney Crosby. And then he's going on. And the more Bettman talked about him, I go, okay, it's not Sidney Crosby. Shoot. Okay, it's probably Chris Letang. And then he's like, Chris Letang and his son. And I'm just like, wow. You should have started that sentence with this defenseman.
Yeah.
And then right there, you could have just crushed all our expectations that Sid the Kid was going to come out and like shake hands with like the first round Penguins pick.
I thought it was going to be Mario at first. And then he said he was on 3 Stanley Cup winning teams. And I was like, well, it can't be Mario.
Can't be Mario, yeah.
He owned 3 Stanley Cup winning teams. And that was Letang. I'm like, that's cool. Letang's son, he's pretty funny. I've seen like videos of him like in the locker room talking to the players and stuff. He's pretty funny. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, please God, no more decentralized draft, please.
Oh, what'd you think about the trade alert button when Bettman would come out and he'd hit the big red button and then the screen behind him would turn red and it would say trade alert and there'd be like flashing lights?
I was hoping it was like a Staples Easy button where their IT department would come and fix their feeds, but it wasn't.
Well, before we move off of this topic, are there any of the picks that you'd like to talk about in particular that are interesting to you or exciting to you or who you might actually think might make the jump to the NHL next season and not get sent back to junior?
I mean, there were a lot of good picks. I mean, I was hoping and praying that one of the top guys were going to fall to pick 11 and 12 for Pittsburgh. But to no avail. I think Roger McQueen's going to be a a pretty good player for Anaheim, especially since he now lives at Disneyland. Apparently.
Oh my God. The Ducks flew this kid. What's his name? Roger
McQueen, yeah.
Roger McQueen, yeah. He gets drafted by two of the former Mighty Ducks actors from the Mighty Ducks movies. And then they're like, and now you're going to go on a helicopter ride to Disneyland. And I'm thinking, wait, Disney sold the team. Why are they giving Disney the business?
Yeah, still got the connection thing, and
well, they're always going to have that connection.
They're always going to have the connection. It's not going to go away.
Yeah, and then they were checking in on him, like when he was like at Disney World, and he was like greeted by Wild Wing, the team's mascot, and I was just like, all right, this is kind of cool.
I was kind of surprised Hagen's dropped, but I kind of figured they were waiting for him to go to Boston. I think his draft capital kind of slid off there towards the end of the season. Schaefer was no surprise there. Misa, probably no surprise. I was pretty positive that Chicago was going to go with Anton Frondell from the Swedish kid. And they did. Porter Martone, I really wish would have fell, but I kind of assumed that that's what Philly was looking at. He's huge winger, 6'3", 204 pounds, as a OHL player. So he's only going to get bigger and more solid. Penguins pick with Kindle, because they traded the 12th pick to Philly. But Kindle, I like him a lot. He's small though, so I don't know how that's going to work out, but we'll see. I like his game. He's pretty good. I wanted Victor Eklund with the back-to-back picks myself for a winger, but Islanders got him. They got, what was that guy's name? Kashawn Atchison, I think his name was.
Oh, yeah.
He plays for Barrie, but he's like 6'2", 200-pound defenseman, so he's pretty solid. Yeah, I feel like there weren't like tons of surprises other than the fact that a goaltender went with the 20th pick. Columbus took that Andreyanov from the Russia junior program. And I think another goaltender went later, right? Like Josh Ravensburger or Bergen, not Ravensburger. Ravensburgen went to San Jose. They got that pick from Dallas, like with the 30th pick. So it's always interesting to see if goaltenders go in the first round, because a lot of times teams don't bother dealing with a goaltender in the first round because you don't know. And goaltenders generally take the longest to develop of all the players.
Yeah, it's risky.
Way more than a forward. I mean, defensemen take a while generally, but forwards are usually more NHL ready than the rest, and it works its way backward. And goalies are generally 3-4 year projects a lot of times, unless they're phenom type players. So it's always interesting to see who gets taken in goalie wise in the first round and how that pans out down the road. But I don't know that I was too super shocked by most of what went down in the first round, though.
I did not really keep up too much on these prospects. I knew like the top 3 or top 5 or whatever, but I guess because the Blackhawks didn't have the first overall pick. So maybe, well, when they had the first overall pick and Connor Bedard was the consensus number 1, of course I was excited about that. But, I think that like number 3 is just such a weird place to be. You know what I mean? Like you almost need like the number 2 team to screw up or like the number 1 team to screw up. And then you just end up taking who you think is the best guy at that point. And then they end up being better than the first overall pick. I would like to have seen Michael Misa fall to 3. I know that obviously didn't happen, and the Sharks grabbed him, and rightly so. And the Sharks are going to have an exciting young group of forwards in the next few seasons. They're building through the draft, and you hope it works for them.
I mean, when you're a younger team and you're basically starting over, that's kind of what you got to do. You got to build from the draft. You got to stock your AHL team, and you got to build from the back end. You got to get a solid goalie. You got to build defensemen. Because as we've seen, you can have as much offensive power if you want, but when you get to the end and the cup's on the line, if you don't have a defensive back end, there's a problem. And most teams have to build that from within. That's why you see so many defensemen get drafted, especially in first rounds a lot of times. Because they're just, you got to have these elite guys and try to bring them up through your system.
I mean, you look at
what you got to do.
I mean, I'm gonna just go with an example that I know because it's the Blackhawks. But when I was really looking at how they built their team in 2010 and 2013 and 2015, the very first player they got from that group was Brent Seabrook. They drafted him, I think, in 2003, and he was a cornerstone. I mean, he was an important part of all three of those teams. I mean, of course, there's Kane, Taves, and Keith. Those are like the big three. But then, and then just saying like defensemen, yeah, I mean, they draft like the three most important defensemen on the Blackhawks, Keith, Seabrook, and Nicholas Hjalmarsson, all drafted.
Yeah, and you look at this draft, I mean, 8 defensemen went in the first round. 2 of them to the Islanders. So, I mean, and the number 1 pick is a defenseman. So, there you go.
Like you said, draft defense. I mean, sometimes you could sign away a great defenseman, but yeah, you really need.
You can, but not often, especially in the salary cap era. It's too much.
It's harder.
It's too much.
What year was Hedman drafted? Was that 2009? Hedman and Tavares.
2009, yes.
Yes.
Hedman went second, I think.
Who went second? Hedman.
Hedman went second. Yeah.
Yeah. What was funny is I remember like entering some contest on one of the websites. I think it was Sports Card Forum. And they were like, pick who you think's going to be drafted. They wanted us to pick like who we thought the top 5 picks were going to be. Right. And everybody was saying Tavares is going to go first. And he, of course, did go first. But I actually slotted Hedman first. And, of course, he didn't get picked first. But I was thinking to myself, wow, this guy is big. He's a big defenseman, and he's really good. And I'm thinking Tavares, also a really good player. But you look at him now, like who would you rather have now on your team if you had to pick one? Hedman or Tavares?
I mean, I was going to say at this point, me as a Penguins fan, I would go with Victor Hedman because that's one place we lack is in defense.
Well, no, but I'm just thinking that like it's more exciting to draft a high scoring player from junior.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you think this is going to be our Eric Lindros. This is going to be our Alex Daig. This is going to be our Alexei Lafreniere. This is going to be our Connor McDavid. This is going to be our Connor Bedard. This is going to be our Austin Matthews, right? Who's going to come in and score a ton of points and get everybody excited. And
flash and flare puts butts in seats.
Yes, it does.
But defense wins championships. And
yeah,
I know that's the old cliche that our dads say to us, but it's the truth.
So I feel now that, like, obviously there's been many times that defensemen have been selected first overall. That's not at all unusual. I think a goalie getting picked first overall is still unusual just because it happens so infrequently. I mean, because, you have less goalies on a team than you have other ones. So if a goalie gets drafted first overall, they have to really be something eye-opening and special. But yeah, a lot of defensemen picked, and you gave the reason why. I thought it was interesting that Buffalo drafted a defenseman in the first round. They have like 2 really good defensemen already. they're drafting another, good prospect defenseman. I just thought that was kind of an interesting choice. Radim Murka.
Yeah, he's from Seattle. Actually, 2 guys from Seattle went in the first round. Him and Braden Coots, his teammate.
On the T-Birds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you said goalies drafted in the first round, I was trying to think in my head who else other than Fleury.
Rick DiPietro got drafted first overall.
Oh, that's right.
The first goalie to get picked first overall was Michael Plasse, Plasse, of the Montreal Canadiens in 1968. So that's one example of a goalie. Well, the first example of a goalie getting selected first overall, and then Rick DiPietro in 2000, and then Marc-Andre Fleury in 2003.
So I knew it was Fleury, and I thought there was one other one, but I don't remember Plasse as being a first rounder. But there you go.
Well, he was drafted in 1968. Where were you in 1968?
Not even a zygote.
Right, not even a zygote. And I applaud you for using the word zygote. It's all sciencey and stuff. I'll probably watch the draft next year because, like I said, I'm a glutton for these things. And maybe they'll figure out a way to make it go a little faster. Another thing too, maybe what they need to do is they need to just have more hosts. Because when you get people who are bored, you need to have other people talk, right? When you have to talk for 4.5 hours, look, if you had to host the thing by yourself for 4.5 hours, you'd be bored. If it was you and me for 4.5 hours, we'd be bored. There are a few other people. I mean, I get there were other people, but I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here. Like, I want them to continue televising the draft so I can choose to watch it or not watch it, but they got to pick up the pace, man. 3 hours tops.
Yeah, I vote for no more decentralized, make it centralized. And to quote myself from earlier, no more soul-suckingly long.
Long what?
Just long. It's too long.
Okay.
Soul-suckingly long.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Shall we move on to the Hockey Hall of Fame class of 2025?
Yes.
Okay. So really quick, I just want to rattle off the inductees for the class of 2025. We have Joe Thornton, Zdeno Chara, Duncan Keith, Alex McGillney, Jennifer Botterill, Brianna Decker, Danielle Savenjo, and Jack Parker, who's a longtime collegiate coach. So I think this is a really solid class. I mean, of course, we could say, well, what about other guys that retired 3 years ago? But can't really argue with anybody on this list.
I mean, I can't either. I think we've been saying for a while that Mogilny is one of those names that has been left off this list for quite a while. But a lot of people are lying now and saying they never said that, and they don't think he should have been in because it's now becoming the Hall of Mediocre. But that's the only one I've heard any discourse on.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought up McGillney. I got my facts here. So Alex McGillney should have been in the Hall a long time ago. I don't know why he's not in the Hall of Fame. I'm going to maybe guess bias against Russians, which, not really, because, I mean, they put Tretiak in the Hockey Hall of Fame in 89. And then, of course, a lot of the old Russians who were big in the 80s and 90s, I mean, they also kind of went in, like Fetisov and Larionov. But I think sometimes you just have, like, the Hall selection committee has biases. And I feel like when those guys are eventually cycled out and a new people replace them, those biases are gone. When we talked about Doug Wilson a couple years back, when he got inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, well, why wasn't he inducted in the first place? Why did he have to wait so freaking long, like 20 years? Well, because he was the president of the Players Association Union. He was the Blackhawks rep for the Players Association. So, of course, a lot of teams didn't like him for that reason. So when you have a lot of these old school hockey traditionalists in the Hockey Hall of Fame, running, the selection committee or making those choices, they're going to be like, oh, yeah, Doug Wilson, that guy really used to annoy me when he was the player rep, right? Now that you have guys like Lanny McDonald on the selection committee saying, oh, yeah, Doug Wilson, he was such a fierce competitor when I played against him in the 70s and the 80s, right? They have an admiration for them, right? So I think that's what it is you get rid of some of the dinosaurs and then you get in some newer thinking. So McGillney defected from Russia in 1989. He had 473 goals in the NHL, 473 goals, 559 assists for 1,032 points in 990 games. Yes, that is better than a point per game. Now, he won an Olympic gold medal in 1988. He won a world championship gold in 1989 and a world junior championship gold in 1989. He was the team captain of that team in 89 and also won a world championship silver in 1988. He won the Stanley Cup in 2000 with the New Jersey Devils. He won the Lady Byng Trophy in 2003. Needless to say, he's a member of the Triple Gold Club because he has a Stanley Cup. He has a World Championship gold, and he has an Olympic gold. Of course, he had that one monster season in 92-93 where he scored 76 goals and had 127 points in 77 games. And he's also the first Russian to captain an NHL team. So I don't see how any of that doesn't just make him a shoo-in automatically. Because like I say, if a player has 400 goals, if they have 600 assists, if they have 1,000 points, minimally, it really needs to be looked at. The only thing he doesn't have there, he doesn't have 600 assists, but he has 1,000 points and he has over 400 goals. And he had some injuries towards the end of his career, which slowed him down. So I don't know, man. What's your thinking on McGillney? Because it's so great to finally see him in the Hall of Fame.
I've been saying for quite a few years now that he needs to be somebody that's strongly considered as a candidate to be put in there, just on stats alone. I know the 1,000 game mark has always been like the lock, and he was only at 990, but I don't care. You look at his point production, and beyond just that, because remember, this isn't the NHL Hall of Fame, it's the Hockey Hall of Fame. So if you got to look at the total body of work and what his impact on the game was, in my opinion. And you mentioned them, triple goal, the
triple goal.
There aren't many of those. I mean, the list isn't like hundreds and hundreds of players. It's not a common thing. He's got an Olympic gold. He does have a Stanley Cup, which I know is more of a team thing, but 9 times out of 10, people look at that and they say, oh, okay, does he have a cup? Yeah, he was on a cup-winning team. He contributed. He did this. He did that. Sure, it was maybe towards the end of his career or towards the twilight years, but I don't care about all that. What this guy meant to the game, I mean, the fact that he had to defect from a country just to come over here and play, and there's a whole story involved in that, and I encourage people to go look it up and read it. But I just think the impact that you make on the game needs to be looked at as a whole, whether it's international play, play within whatever other program you were involved in addition to what you did on the ice in the NHL. I have no problem with him going in. I think he could have went in a lot longer ago. He just got overlooked. And I don't know why that is. I don't think we'll ever know why, because the Hockey Hall of Fame is one of those that's not transparent at all about how and why they choose people.
Right. So now I think the next best long overlooked player is Curtis Joseph. And not to get into Hall of Fame snubs, but Joseph ain't in the Hall of Fame, and he has the most wins of any goalie not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, the goalie thing is one of those other unwritten rules too. It's like, how many goalies do you take in? Do you take a goalie every year? If there's 3 eligible, do you spread them out over 3 seasons? Do you take them all in at once? Because I mean, you look at the list of who was available this time around. Are you telling me Carey Price isn't going to get in? Of course he's going to get in. He didn't get in on first ballot. They're going to take him in, but do you take him in at the same time and take Cujo too? I don't think they would do that. They already did a 2 for last year.
What 2? Because there was a 1 year they had Vernon, Barrasso, and Lundqvist, if I remember correctly.
Was that last year or the year before?
I think that was a year before, I think.
Okay. Well, whenever that was, that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Took a bunch.
So you had 2 overlooked goalies, 2 long eligible goalies finally get in that year. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think, some of the guys that came up eligible, they're going to get in. I mean, yeah, they weren't first ballot, but they're going to get in. I think goalies don't get as high of a priority over the skaters and the scorers. Because look, Keith Tkachuk has been eligible for a while. A lot of people think he's definitely Hall worthy. Rod Brindamore, his name's still floating around out there. Dare I go as far as saying Patrick Ilyash? Because do the Devils win the Cups if he's not on that team? I doubt it.
No.
Yeah, so there's guys like that that have been sitting for a while that could potentially go in there. I don't want them to dummy down things like, okay, well, now we don't have any more 1,000-point scorers, so let's go to the 900-point scorers. Let's go to the 800 point. I don't want them to do that by any means, but if you got to look at the overall body of work here for people. And I think everybody that they brought in, you have that. You have it with Chara. You have it with Keith. You have it with Thornton. You definitely have it with the ladies, with Brianna Decker and Jennifer Bottrell, because there was no NHL for them to play in. So they have the international experience with playing. So, yeah.
Looking at like Joe Thornton, I mean, first year of eligibility was a no-brainer.
I agree.
when I was looking up at his stats, 430 goals, 1,109 assists for 1,539 points in 1,714 games. So when I read that, I thought I was misreading. I'm like, no, 1,000 points. No, 1,000 assists. No, 1,100 assists, right? This guy has over 1,100 assists. I mean, that's insane. Now you could say, oh, he played 24 years in the NHL. Well, guess what? You don't play 24 years in the NHL if you're not a great player, okay?
Right.
If you suck, you're going to be out of the league pretty quick. If you're average, you're probably going to last 6 years. If you're good, you're going to last 10 years. If you're great, 15. If you're a legend, 18 to 22. But when you get to 24, I mean, we're talking Gordie Howe and Chris Chelios territory here, like legendary.
Yeah, you don't see any fourth line pylons in the league past a couple of years. So.
Right. You look at Gordie Howe. Gordie Howe had, 26 years in the NHL and then I think 5 in the WHA. So, I mean, he played a long freaking time too, and he accumulated a lot of points.
And if you look at the overall list, there's only 16 players that have at least 1,500 points. And he's one of them. So.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, that obviously made a lot of sense. I'm just sorry that, I mean, his last team was at the Panthers.
21-22, yeah. And then 2021, he was with Toronto.
Yeah, it would have been nice to see him win with the Panthers and then retire. But yeah, just little too late, just a little too late for the Panthers to become the dynasty that they're becoming. So we'll always say, oh, it's so sad that he didn't win the Stanley Cup. He did win the Art Ross and Hart Trophy in 2006. And what's interesting about that is that was the year he was traded mid-season from the Bruins to the Sharks, then goes on to be named the regular season MVP and win the scoring title. That's never happened before. That hasn't happened since, where a player gets traded mid-season, wins the scoring title, or wins the MVP award.
There was a player that was hurt for half the season and came back and still won the scoring title.
Oh, yeah.
His name was Mario Lemieux, but that's not what we're talking about here.
No, we are not. So Thornton, obviously that made a lot of sense. And then Zdeno Chara made a lot of sense. I mean, 1,600 games, tallest NHLer, for what that's worth. I know that's not a reason to put somebody in a Hall of Fame, but I mean, if we were going to go by physical attributes, then Joe Thornton would be in the Hall of Fame just based on his beard.
It's true.
Yeah.
But Chara's size helped him be the imposing figure that he was.
Yes.
When you got to line up across from that guy, that can't feel good.
No. Chara also played 24 seasons in the NHL. He won the Norris Trophy and the Stanley Cup, captained the Bruins in 2011 to the Stanley Cup. So, I mean, he's a great defenseman. I mean, for those reasons. I mean, big, tall, imposing, long reach. I mean, just great D-man. Obviously great because he's in the Hall of Fame now. Yeah.
Not only did he win that Norris, he was a 6-time finalist for the Norris.
It's a tough trophy to win. I mean, especially if you look at like other people who were playing at the same time he was. I mean, in the early 2000s, you had Nicholas Lidstrom, and then in the late 2000s, you had Duncan Keith. So, and PK Subban won one year, and you had a lot of good defensemen. I mean, it's a tough trophy because there's only one defenseman award. There should be two. There's only one. There's like 5 different awards for forwards.
Yeah, there should be an offensive and a defensive defenseman.
Yep.
But
you need the Ray Bourque and the Bobby Orr.
But that's the thing, just to be nominated 6 times and be a finalist. So you're one of 3. You're one of the 3 best defensemen in the league 6 times. 7, counting the one he won.
Right. So Chara, I mean, obviously made sense. Duncan Keith obviously made sense. 3 Stanley Cup championships. 2
Keith
Norris
is one of those
trophies.
guys that's quietly good. Like, you don't hear people talk about Duncan Keith, I think, enough. He doesn't come up in the conversation of, like, best defenseman. And he should.
Well,
I think he's underrated.
He was named, I believe he was named one of the top 100 players of all time when the NHL did their centennial season a few years back. Oh, I think it was like 8 years back, like 2017.
If I'm talking to casual hockey fans, not you, but a casual hockey fan that's also not a longtime Blackhawk fan.
Of course.
Say, who are the best defensemen you can think of? Keith's name doesn't come up almost ever. And that's crazy. It's crazy to me.
Keith was, I mean, he could be offensive. He was defensive, but he could be offensive. He could chip in on the plays. He just did a lot of smart stuff. I mean, he's just a good leader on the team, won the Norris Trophy 2 times, and won the Conn Smythe Trophy as the playoff MVP in 2015. So, I mean, you know, awesome career. Sorry that it ended in Edmonton, although Edmonton had the right idea. They're like, we need somebody with experience who can help this team win. You know, somebody with Stanley Cup championship experience who can help the team. And, you know, so their heart was in the right place, but he just wasn't the same player at that point.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing, right? The same theme is here. We talked about Thornton for a second. He spent the last 2 years of his career after a long and storied career with 1-2 franchises, bouncing around to a couple teams. You know, Keith had to finish his career with the Oilers. Chara, unfortunately, was a Capital for a year. I mean, so.
And an Islander. I mean, he bounced around a bit.
Yeah, he was an Islander for that second. I forgot his second stint with the Islanders, but.
Oh, sorry. Yes. See, I forgot about his first stint with the Islanders.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, you go back and that's why I always think it's funny. Chara's been around long enough that he has like well over 2,300 trading cards that have been made of him. But basically, he has one rookie card.
Yes, 2,300 cards, and yet one rookie card. Whereas you look at Alex McGillney, and you're like, he was in Pro Set, he was in Tops, he was in OPC, he was in Score, he was in Upper Deck, he was in Score Canadian, he was in Bowman, he was in OPC Premier, right? So he had like 7 different rookie cards, right? And then you look at like Zdeno Chara, and he was in 97, 98 SP Authentic, and that's it.
Right. He has the Future Watch auto card, and he's an Islander, and, you know.
It's not an autograph.
It is not.
It is not. Just a Future Watch.
It's just Future Watch. That's right.
Future Watch.
I'm so used to saying Future Watch auto. That's what I just say.
FWA, right?
Right. It's just the Future Watch. But
right.
Yeah. So he has one rookie card.
Which makes
it tough. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, which makes him tough to collect, because when I decided I was going to get a Zdeno Chara rookie card, it was tough because he was still playing at the time, but I think people who had the card were like, this ain't a $5 card. This guy's going to get in the Hall, right? So they were trying to cash in on it when they could. I forgot what I paid for it. I think I paid, actually, I don't even. I probably paid more than I wanted to. Who knows? But then once I got the card that I wanted, I just forgot about what I paid for it. I wanted it. I got it. I have it. I'm happy, right? Today I looked into it, and, you know, I mean, they're kind of like between $35 and $70, which I know is kind of a big range, but, you know.
I found one in a dollar box like 10 years ago.
Wow.
So, I mean, if that tells you anything. But that's the thing, like you said about McGillney. McGillney's got a ton of rookie cards because they were all in 90-91. So the junk wax, the what do you call it?
Neo retro.
Neo retro period.
Yes.
They're all easily affordable. If you're chasing Hall of Famer cards, the McGillney cards that you want to find some of the certified autos. He has like 12 that have ever been made, and I think most of them are all be a player related. So you don't see him very often because he didn't sign that much. So there isn't a whole lot of stuff out there for him. And, you know, one rookie card for Chara, and, you know, Thornton doesn't even really have that many rookie cards. He has like 2, maybe 3.
So he's got 96-97 Upper Deck. He's got 96-97 Black Diamond, and he's got 96-97 Ice.
So you count the Ice one as a rookie card?
Well, I just pulled from trading card database, so that's just.
I mean, some people do. It's a World Junior card, so but maybe because
they're all World Junior cards.
Yeah, the Black Diamond one is too, and his regular Upper Deck is the Program of Excellence one.
Right, so they're all with Team Canada.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess I would qualify as that too. But
yeah, I mean, I like his 97-98 Upper Deck card better, where he's got like his hands on the stick and his he's kind of like, it's like a portrait shot, right? Like I like it. What?
It's like a glamour shot.
Well, it's okay. The thing is that he's in a Bruins jersey, and I like it when card companies would do that, when they would just say, hey, he's the first overall pick. We need to have him in a Bruins jersey, even if it's a portrait shot. I was okay with that. Interestingly enough, is Thornton was picked first overall. He had a not great rookie year. In fact, the guy that was, I think, picked 7th or 8th overall, also by the Bruins, Sergei Samsonov, ended up winning Rookie of the Year. And so then everybody was like, well, Samsonov is a way better player because he won Rookie of the Year. Well, he had a better rookie year. But again, if you look now, just because somebody wins Rookie of the Year doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be the best player in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, or in case of Joe Thornton, 24 years from now.
Yeah. I mean, now you got one player in the Hall of Fame, and the other player I have 47 game used cards of.
Yeah. How's that Sergei Samsonov collection coming along?
It's stagnant. It's very stagnant. I've cornered the market.
You've cornered the market. Yeah. You've done with that what I've done with those Rennie Bork Artifacts cards that I've been hoarding.
I have enough jersey cards I could probably remake a jersey out of.
Really? I thought one of them was a red swatch from a Blackhawks jersey.
I didn't say it was going to match.
Oh.
I'm just going to sew it back together.
Frankencard.
Yes.
So these 4 former NHL players, obviously excellent, amazing choices. I mean, I think McGillney should have been in a long time ago, but he's in now. That's all that matters. But now this is what I want to say. Jennifer Botterill. When I saw her name, I said, wait, isn't she already in the Hall of Fame? That was like a pick where I said, wait, well, I thought she was in the Hall already.
That's legitimate because she's been eligible the last few times around and kind of got passed over. Her comparable, when you look at a lot of the statistical type stuff, is like Caroline Ouellette. So, and she's in. So how can you take her and not? I think when Caroline went in, everybody knew Jen Botterill was going in at some point because they have very similar statistics.
You look at Botterill, and so for Team Canada, 3 gold medals, 2002, 2006, 2010 in the Olympics, 1 Olympic silver in 98. Of course, that was the year that Team USA women's upset and won that gold medal. I don't know if it was an upset. They win. A win's a win. And that was the first women's Olympic hockey medal tournament. And then Botterill also had 5 gold and 3 silver medals in IIHF Women's World Championship tournaments. Well-decorated player, and she was great in the NCAA, and she played pro. I mean, this would have been prior to the current Women's Pro League. So,
she played for Harvard. So not only is she a good athlete, but she's smart. So there you go.
Yeah, and then we had Brianna Decker, who was a USA player, and she won Olympic gold in 2018, silver in 2014 and 2022. And in the IIHF World Women Championships, she has 6 gold medals and 2 silver medals. So, it's not an accident when you're on a team that wins a lot of gold medals. If you win 1 gold medal, maybe you were just on a great team. But when you are on a team that wins 6 gold medals and then the 7th one in the Olympics, I mean, you are one of the reasons why that team is great.
So even though I don't disagree with Brianna Decker, I was surprised on that pick, actually.
Do tell.
I just thought if they were going to take another female, I thought she wasn't the first one that came to my head, I guess. Honestly, I thought Julie Chu would have gone in before her.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But again, I don't think she's not deserving at all. Now, if you're a card collector and you collect women's players. I mean, the card world doesn't think she's deserving, because if you ever try to look up Brianna Decker cards, there's a whole 2 of them.
And one is unlicensed.
Yeah. I mean, she has a Wisconsin Badgers team card from like back 25 years ago, I think.
Yeah, 2010, yeah.
Yeah, and she has an unlicensed Olympic card that was made like in 2022. That's it. That's all that's out there. So unless there's other bootleg ones or something, now I'm sure now that she's going into the hall, you'll see, if Tim Hortons does, stuff, you'll probably see like a throwback card or something they throw in. So I hope Upper Deck takes advantage of that, because even Jim Bottrell only has like 23, 25 cards, something like that.
I counted 21 on Trading Card Database, and since you mentioned the Upper Deck, her last card was 2023 Tim Hortons Legends.
Yeah, so maybe they'll do something again now that Brianna Decker's in the Hall of Fame to get her trading card count up a little bit.
Yeah, higher than
Bottrell, even though 20, whether she has 20, 21, 23, whatever, it's a very small amount, and most of her stuff is very difficult to obtain.
Yeah,
so if you're a fan of hers,
cards, yeah,
there's a lot of team issue cards. I have her 910 O-Pee-Chee Canadian Heroes.
You're talking about Bottrell?
Yeah. It was an insert.
Well, no, she has a lot of cards, and she has some, that card, but she also has some in-the-game cards from like 2006, 2007. Yeah, but anyways, go on. O-Pee-Chee.
Going for the gold one, you can get for about $5 usually. Mm-hmm. But I have that O-Pee-Chee Canadian Heroes one. They're not as easy to find, a lot of them. Mm-hmm. So if you call yourself a super fan, good luck.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge collecting women's hockey cards. There's a great account on Instagram that I follow called Women's Hockey Cards. And this person who runs the account, they'll post pictures of women's hockey cards, but he also creates customs for players who didn't have cards, or just will take like a popular design and then put like a women's player on it. So he makes a lot of really cool customs. So that's definitely a cool Instagram account to check out, Women's Hockey Cards. I mean, every now and then, like I've just been like, oh, I didn't know that player had a card, or, oh, I've never seen that before, or, oh, that's a cool custom.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Because up until a few years ago, women's hockey didn't really get a lot of cardboard attention, honestly, other than some one-offs here and there. In that brief period where Manon Rhéaume was in every set and on every card.
Right. And then you might get one other woman here, or, the only other example I can think of is Aaron Witten.
And you had Cami Granato show up a few times.
Of course, Cami Granato. Yeah, I'm sorry. Right. Of course, Cami Granato. And then you had the 97-98 Collector's Choice. You had like Angela James was in that, and Haley Wickenheiser was in that, and like a lot of women on that 98 Canadian Olympic team.
Right. He didn't have a lot of it. And so now that it's becoming more and more popular, and it's become more of a centralized thing, that, to use that term again, since we were already using it, more of a mainstream type thing rather than, we can only watch them play during the Olympics. Now that you have the Professional Women's Hockey League, and they're getting a lot more exposure. I think it's good for the game. I think it's good for collecting. It gives people a different thing to bring into their collection.
Absolutely. I want to talk about the builders that were also inducted.
Bob the Builder?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. I used to work for a toy company. There you go. And we made
Bob the Builder. No way.
And we used to make so you could check that off your bingo card. But and we made Bob the Builder toys.
Nice.
Yes, and to sound really old and dated, and I remember making a Flash. Remember Flash websites, like websites that would have Flash for like the animation, and I remember making like a Flash Bob the Builder mini.
Was it like Cows with Guns?
No, it wasn't like Cows with Guns.
Remember that one?
I don't.
That was a good one.
I think I've heard of it, but I don't think I've ever played it.
Look it up, people.
Oh, okay. So Danielle Savinjo, one of the 2 builders inducted. She was a coach. She was a coach, general manager, a couple of notable contributions, a couple of notable accomplishments. She was the first woman to be an assistant coach in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. She was the assistant coach of the Canadian women's Olympic hockey team in 1998 when they won the silver medal. And then she was the head coach of the 2002 Canadian women's hockey when they won the gold medal. And that really put her on the map in like the hockey world. And actually, this is the fun thing that I thought this was a really interesting fact, because when I saw her name, I knew immediately who she was. And then when they said, and she was the coach of the 2002 women's team, I'm like, yep, I remember back in 2002, they did like a little feature about her during the Olympics. And here's the interesting thing. She was at the 1988 Winter Olympics in Calgary. She was a security guard. She was a police officer, so she was working security. So technically she wasn't a security guard. She was a police officer who was working security. I guess you could say security guard at the 1988 Winter Olympics in Calgary. And then she went into a job transition. And then you see here 14 years later, she goes from being a security guard to the head coach of the women's hockey team. And I just thought that was such a cool freaking story.
Yeah, that's like one of those full circle stories.
It was full circle, and that's why I thought it was so cool. Like, and she just said how excited that she was to be at the Olympics and get to see the Olympics and work at the Olympics and you know, and then like 14 years later, or well, I guess 88, 98. So 10 years later, she was an assistant coach. So yeah, I mean, in 10 years, she went from being in the audience to being on the bench. You know, that's pretty freaking awesome. And then led the team to the gold medal. So I just thought, wow, that's so cool.
That is. That's awesome. I never heard that.
Obviously, she doesn't have any hockey cards. I looked. I didn't find any.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Yeah, because I mean, you don't find, you know, if women's hockey cards are released for like an Olympic team, it's usually just the team and not the coaches, assistant coaches, and so forth.
Right.
But how about Jack Parker, who was like the Boston University head coach for like ever? From like 1972 to 2013, although...
I was going to say ever and ever.
Yeah, except for 83, 84. I didn't see a line of stats for that year. Could be wrong about that, but I just checked the Hockey DB stats. He was an assistant coach in 69, 70, 72, 73. Again, I don't know about the in-between years. But regardless, just in the league, college hockey coach for frickin' ever. The 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and into the early 2000 teens.
You're forgetting the best part. He was a player. He graduated and then came back to be the coach the next year. Mm-hmm. How nuts is that? I think that's really crazy. Like, how often does that happen? Probably never.
I mean, I think it I don't know about the coaching for 30, 72, 82, 92, 2000. I don't know about the coaching for 40 years part, but yeah, some of it happens sometimes.
I mean, some guys will retire and then become a coach or be on the staff or something.
Right.
We're talking about a college kid who graduates and then becomes the assistant coach of the team he just played on. That sounds bizarre to me. But
yeah.
It was the 60s. Things were crazy then.
Oh, yeah. That's cool. I mean, as far as collecting, again, not a lot of, actually exactly one card. 0304 Boston University Terriers team issued card.
That's the only one I saw too.
Yeah, it's always funky to try to get collectibles of the builders. I remember when Gary Bettman was inducted and he didn't have any cards to his name, although later on he did end up having a cut signature card in one of the products. And then I also found out after the fact that he makes a cameo appearance on a 10-11 score card where he's handing the Conn Smythe trophy to, was it Taves that year? Yeah, Taves. Jonathan Taves. But yeah, so yeah, builders don't usually, coaches and, well, the builder types, usually coaches, don't really get a lot of hockey cards.
Yeah. Now the broadcasters sometimes do.
Yes.
Especially this year.
Oh yeah.
Because Yeah, because the Foster Hewitt went to Darryl Ray.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. So he's got plenty of rookie cards, right?
He's got 2 rookie cards.
Yeah,
If I
was
remember,
gonna say all of 2.
he has I know this 91-92 Top Stadium Club and 91-92 Bowman. That's off the top of my head. I'm going to look this up, or you can look that up. I'm looking at Jack Parker's career really quick. I just want to see if there's any. Here, championships. 3-time NCAA national champion, 6-time Hockey East tournament champion, 8-time Hockey East regular season champion, 4-time ECAC hockey tournament champions, 2-time ECAC hockey regular season champions, ECAC Hockey East regional champion 1 time. 3 times he won top coach and NCAA Division I award. 5 times he won a different coach of the year award. And then in 2014, the Hobie Baker Legends of College Hockey Award. Most wins with 1 school. He has a record. Also, most losses with 1 school, most ties with 1 school. Well, when you coach for 40 years, you're probably going to have the most wins, the most losses, and the most ties with 1 team. Most NCAA tournament appearances, and so forth. So, like we said about playing, you don't coach that long if you're not a successful coach, but also a good coach, because
Right.
I don't want to diss on football, although I have no love for football, but I don't know. I feel like college football, when you have like a college football coach for like 30 years, they always develop some sort of a God complex. And then they end up like getting fired from the team in like controversy or shame like years later, when you hear like, oh, and he used to strangle his players or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, because the guy's been there for 35 years and he thinks he's untouchable and he's just like, right? But you don't really hear about that like with hockey coaches. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. If you're a bad egg, you don't stick around for 40 years. It just doesn't happen.
Plus, 40 years ago, you were allowed to strangle people. So it was okay. It was perfectly acceptable.
Right. Yeah.
Not so much anymore. Now, if you think about strangling, they get upset for some reason. So on the Darryl Ray thing,
yep,
you were close.
Okay, wait. 91-92, it wasn't Stadium Club?
Well, he does have one.
Okay.
However, he had an upper deck card in 90-91.
Oh no! In the extended, in the update series, it's a close up side view of him, like head and shoulder.
Yeah. Card number 541 in the set.
I am such a nerd that I can picture Darryl Ray's rookie card in my head. Okay, so
yep, it's a close up side shot of him in his full Whaler gear.
Yep, the blue and white mask.
It's not really the same shot as the one on the back, but it looks like it could be like a zoomed in version of the one on the back.
I don't know why I forgot about that rookie card, but I remember his Stadium Club card.
Because 91-92, he does have the Stadium Club. He also has a Topps and O-Pee-Chee, and he has a Bowman.
Yeah, you know what? I knew he had a Topps card, because I know that on the back of the Stadium Club card, it showed his Topps rookie card. It was we got to do a review of the old Stadium Club sets, at least 91-92. We got to do. I mean, we did all the 90-91 sets, and we never really did all the 91-92 sets.
We did not. You think about Razor's cards, though.
Yeah.
For his career and how long he played, just to make it up to the NHL, he has one upper deck card in 90-91. Then he has the 4 cards in 91-92. Right. He didn't have a card again until 2010, when Panini started making like throwback cards and stuff like that. Like he had a Brass Bonanza card when they did like all the Whalers, and he has a Voices of the Game announcer card. Mm-hmm. He had some buybacks with the 2010-11 upper deck that they had. So he doesn't have a whole lot that's out there, but
he was in pro cards for the 4 years that they did AHL and IHL sets.
Yes, he was.
And he was in the Edmonton Oilers 87-88 set as well.
People need to go back and try to find his 84-85 Kamloops Blazers card the team card that the police issued, where he's kind of posed like Glenn Hall on the card.
Huh.
That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah. I wonder if I have that set. I have a lot of minors and junior sets.
Probably. You have every set.
No, I don't. Because every time I want to write about a certain card, I'm like, oh, shoot, I don't have the 2003 Peoria Riverman set or whatever. So, yeah, I got to.
That's because no one has that.
Right. Well, no, but I mean, also, like, a lot of my collection, just because I'm showing my age here, like, a lot of stuff from the 80s, 90s, less so in the 2000s. And then it just gets harder to get, like, you know, obviously any team set from the 70s is tough because, you know, nobody was really saving them back then. I'm talking about like team issued cards.
Yeah.
80s and 90s a little more plentiful. And then I think by like the 2000s, I think a lot of teams are like, we don't really make money on these. We're going to cut back on this. But yeah, Darryl Ray, I'm glad you brought him up also for being the Foster Hewitt Memorial Award winner. They don't actually call it a Hall of Fame induction, although it's in the Hall of Fame. But you're not in the Hall of Fame, but you're honored by the Hall of Fame, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you don't get to participate in the big ceremony. They do your awards like the day before or something like that.
Right, yeah.
It's always like in a private ceremony held earlier. It's like
the
Academy Awards or the Oscars and stuff, that in a private ceremony, we gave away these 37 awards that no one cared about.
Yes, for the best technical sound direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any last thoughts before I wrap this one up?
Nope. Just if anybody's listening, petition the NHL to stop doing these decentralized drafts, please. Please, please, please. Gary, if you're listening.
Yeah, I'd like to know what you all think about the draft if you watched it, and also what you think about the Hockey Hall of Fame class of 2025. So hit us up on social media. Tim is at TheRealDFG on X. I'm at Puck Junk on X. I'm also at Puck Junk on Bluesky and on Instagram. So thank you for listening to the Puck Junk Hockey Podcast. As always, if you've enjoyed the show, please be sure to like and subscribe. Please be sure to spread the word. If you like to read, you can check out the newsletter at puckjunk.com/newsletter. And if you'd like to support this show, you can do so by purchasing a t-shirt at shop.puckjunk.com. And until next time, collect what you like.